starting the recording now. Thanks everyone for joining us. As you know, today is our free Lunch and Learn webinar, and today we're going to be talking about payroll and end of year. So I'm going to hand it over to Pam, who's our payroll expert. It's all yours.
Thanks, Janelle. Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us and taking a bit of time out to listen to me talk about this. Hopefully it's helpful and helps to get through your year end. If there's any issues, we're always here. Just email help@thrivetech.com.au and one of us will give you a hand. So yeah, today we're looking at payroll specifically for phase 1 single touch payroll. So if anyone's already had their upgrade done to get them ready for phase 2, I recommend that you finish the year out using phase 1 and maybe do your setup preparations for phase 2, but don't start using phase 2 in your financial year. So today I just want to show you, we have some procedures that we'll distribute. We'll be looking at checking your STP setup and configuring all your pays, deductions and fringes so that they print correctly on the STP reconciliation report, which is a custom report that we've designed for our customers. So if you don't have a copy of that, shoot an email off to the help desk and one of us can get that installed for you. And then looking at the steps to reconciling your STP final file to that reconciliation report so you can feel assured that you've got the right data in there that you're finalising. So first thing is just the procedures. We do have, I'm just going to drag them over. We do have some procedures, a PDF that we can distribute to everybody. I'm not going to go right through these today. We'll send them out to everybody that registered for this meeting and have a read through them. If you've got any questions, just shoot us an email to ask. Okay, so reviewing your STP setup. So under your payroll tools menu, there's a modify forms, single touch payroll settings. So hopefully those who have used Sage before are familiar with this screen. It's not the prettiest screen to look at, but you can see it's classifying your pays into the different lump sum IDs, specific allowances, and then you've got your other allowances. When you click on this other allowances button, it opens up this screen here where you can specify the different other allowances that you want to show separately to gross pays. The special pays button is where it opens up this screen here, and that's where we can break out gross pays. And for those that have working holiday makers, we can create formulas for that as well. Voluntary agreement, labour hire, anything that you need to break out separately to gross pays. So typically we have formulas in these fields where most of our customers are probably using formulas and not the default, but don't stress if you are, if it comes in here and it says default. Some of you will actually be using the default. I guess the main thing is to be aware that this setup is here, and if you've got formulas specified, you'll be needing to check those formulas to make sure that they include all the pay IDs that are required. Some of you may not see a formula. It might just be a pay ID like what you see over here. So, you know, it might be pay ID 310 or whatever it might be. Typically, formulas are needed when we're trying to add several pay IDs together to get a single figure to report. So each customer's setup is typically quite different from one another. So places that you'll be checking are all of your allowances, your super guarantee and your reportable super. And if you've got fringe benefits, making sure that you've updated that. I know a lot of customers have a separate fringe ID for each year. And so you do need to make sure that you've updated that in your STP settings to use the new year's fringe ID. So just keep an eye on that. And if you've got formulas being used for gross pays, we might need to check those formulas as well to make sure that they're being adjusted for all the necessary pays and salary sacrifice type things. Let's move on. So when you're looking at your formulas, so if we look at one of the allowance formulas where it's adding up all the pay IDs for fares and travel. So as I said, it's where you've got more than one pay ID is where we need a formula. And what you'll find is when you first go into this formula screen, which you can find through Payroll Tools menu and then into Formulas, you'll often find that these formulas look quite messy. But if you resize the screen, you can often get them lining up quite nicely like this so that they're easier to read. And so you'd be looking at making sure that it covers all necessary pay IDs that make up that item that you're reporting for the allowances. Likewise, if you've got a formula for gross payments, you'll often see something like this, where we're subtracting the separate allowances that we're showing, and then we'll be subtracting, say, the lump sums, and then anything that's classified as non-taxable and not reportable for STP purposes. So if you're not sure about your formulas, they are often difficult to read for new users. Just, again, flag us, send us an email to the help desk. We'll do an online meeting with you and help you to review those formulas and make sure that they are covering everything properly. And if they need some adjustments, we can help you to adjust them. Because unfortunately, there's no copy and paste functionality in there. So it's not as easy as just copying a line and pasting it and changing the number. You do actually have to go and pull the fields out of the tables. So it can be a little bit difficult sometimes. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have a custom STP reconciliation report. And the very first page of that report has some setup instructions that just give you some guidance to, we make use of the printed description field on the setup of the pay, deduction and fringes. And so depending on what you put into that printed description field, that drives how that item appears on this report. So have a read of the instructions on your report. And again, if you don't have the report and you'd like to get a copy, contact our help desk. So to review those printed descriptions, there are some inquiries that will make your life a little bit easier. So again, Payroll Inquiry, lists, and you can pull out your pays, standard deductions and fringes. Now, if the printed description is not a column already showing in the inquiry frame, you can just left click on the heading of the column, any one of the columns, and you can either insert a column before or add a column after. And the field that you want to add is that printed description. And that will then add this column, and you'll start to see what labels you have against each of your pays. And so you want to make sure that they've got the right label so that they print correctly onto that report. Same with the deductions and the fringes. So you can see salary sacrifice nominating as RESC, whereas your standard super guarantee, just SG. Now, in terms of reconciling the STP final file, so basically once you have checked all of your setup and you're happy that the setup is correct, you're going to run your report And on the last page of the report, you'll get this summary that will show you the total number of employees. Now, this bit at the top here, total gross pay, that is all just the gross pay, including all pays, even the ones that are not reportable. Then we break down not reportable and before tax deductions, and then start breaking that up of how it gets reported in your single touch payroll file. Now, this breakup, again, it's driven by those pointed descriptions. So when you upload your final file to the STP portal, you'll then have the opportunity to download a copy of that to Excel. So you want to do that before you submit the file, so that you can drop it out into Excel. It's nice and easy to read. You can then add a row where you can add up all of your totals and check them back to your report to make sure that you've got the right totals. Okay, now you might do that process a few times. You may upload your final file, drop it out into Excel, check your totals and realize that you've got some mistakes. There might be some employees missing, or maybe you've got too many employees, whatever the case may be. That submission, the file that you've uploaded to the portal, if you haven't submitted it, then you can delete that file. If you just go to the submission history, on the right-hand side of the row, there'll be a garbage can icon. You can delete that file, go back to payroll, make the changes you need to make, and produce the file again and go through the same process. Upload it to the portal, drop it out into Excel, and check those totals until you're happy with them. And only once you're happy with them do you then submit that file. So the question is, and this is the one that we often get help emails coming through, is what do we do if those totals don't match? What do we do if the file we've uploaded to the portal doesn't match up with the report? So there's a few things you can do. First of all, check that you've got the same total number of employees. So you've got the same number in your reconciliation report as what you do in your file that you've uploaded to the portal. If there's employees missing, then a thing that you can do is run this payroll inquiry, go into your employee information, employee totals, and then you add columns for your final event and final event date. You're then going to add a condition for year-to-date gross not equal to 0, so that way you're basically seeing everybody that's been paid this year. And then check that that final event checkbox is not ticked for any of those employees that have been paid. Because if it is ticked, it's going to get excluded from that STP file. Okay, so if it's ticked, you want to go into the employee setup and you want to untick the final event checkbox. The only time you should be ticking that throughout the year is if the employee is, say, taking off overseas or something and they want to try and submit a tax return early, and in which case they need everything finalized, or perhaps, worst case scenario, there's been, an employee has deceased and they need to, finalize the estate. And so you may need to do that final file early. So in those rare circumstances, yes, you don't need to report them again. So you'd probably want to adjust your custom report to exclude them because you've already done the final event for them earlier. But under normal circumstances, people just resigning through the year or terminating their employment, you don't need to tick the final event checkbox. You want to make sure that you're lodging a final file at the end of the year. So if you go and untick those employees, go and run your file again, run your final file again, upload it to the portal. Hopefully then you'll then have the right number of employees and your totals will then all match. If you've got too many employees in your final file compared to the report, then again, you can use that employee totals, add those columns, and this time add a condition for final event equal to not ticked. and another condition for year-to-date gross equal to 0. And that's going to show you if you've got any employees who are being included this year, but they actually have 0 values. So they've not actually been paid this year. So what you can do with those ones, if you want to just exclude them out of the file, because they've got no earnings at all for the year, is you can actually tick the final event checkbox and set the date to 30 June 2021, so the last day of the previous fiscal year. That way they'll get excluded from the file, and you don't need to worry about them, muddling up the numbers of employees. So you can do your reconciliation, know you've got the right number of employees, and in this fourth case, you've got the right number of employees, but the totals are still incorrect. That's where you're going to need to go back and double check your setup. Make sure you've got the configuration of your, like the printed descriptions being used on the pays, deductions and fringes, that they tie up to your STP settings that are in the initial form that you checked. Because if there's any differences, then the report's obviously not going to match the file that the system's producing. A good idea is to do some spot checking. So pick some employees who have some of those allowances that are being reported as separate to gross. Salary sacrifice, that's often a cause for the numbers not tying up properly. So maybe go and spot check in your file, pick some employees who have salary sacrifice, and make sure that the gross is being reported correctly. And if you're still absolutely stuck, please contact our help desk and one of us will jump online with you and give you a hand. Now, those instructions that I referred to at the very start, they've got lots of step-by-step instructions on what we've just talked about today. They take you right through what to do. You can see there's 7 pages of this. They're quite comprehensive. So have a read of those. And again, if you need any help with them, please let us know. So I just want to open the floor for any questions. If anyone has anything that's cropped up in prior years that maybe you're a bit baffled by and you want some help, now's your chance.
I was going to say, Pam, if anyone's got a question, they can start typing it into the chat box. And while people are thinking about that, I'll throw, so if I haven't upgraded my Sage CRE, Pam, and I haven't got time to do it before June 30, should I be panicking?
No, no. Sage have a blanket extension for all of their customers that is effective till the end of October. So you don't need to start lodging STP Phase 2 files until the 1st of November. So you've got plenty of time. The same with those who have already upgraded. You have time. There's no rush. I know it's year end. It's a busy time. There's no rush to get your setup done. You can continue submitting using the Phase 1 file. And then when you feel you have your setup all ready with Phase 2 and you're ready to do some testing, you've done your testing, you're happy that it's good to go, then you can flick the switch over to swap it over to Phase 2.
Okay, well, I haven't seen any questions come into the chat box, so
I think the main thing to remember for everybody is, make sure the key thing is upload it to the portal, but don't submit it. Don't submit it until you're happy that you have checked everything and you're happy with the figures. Because while ever you haven't submitted it, the file can just simply be deleted out of the portal, out of that submission history, and you can run it again as if you'd never done it in the first place. So you don't need to go ticking like regenerate file or anything like that. It's simply just going to be run as if you'd never done it at all. You're not going to need to replace file or any of those extra checkboxes on the generate STP screen. You're simply going to be running that final event and uploading it, checking it until you're happy. And only once you're happy the figures are correct, then you're going to submit it.
So you can do that as many times as you like, is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
But what happens if I get a rush of blood and do click the submit button and then realise it was wrong?
Yep,
I'm sure
don't
someone's
panic.
done it.
That's it, absolutely. We're able to go and do a replacement of that file. You know, there are ways to fix it. So if you do need some help fixing it up, contact the help desk. We'll give you some instructions. If it's something, often we'll jump online with you and we'll actually have a look at it with you and see what the best way, because not everybody's circumstances are the same. So it's probably best if we jump online, have a look at what's happened and what we need to do to fix it.
Okay, well, I don't know if it's a good sign or a bad sign, but we still haven't had any questions come into the chat box. This recording will be available on our YouTube channel probably tomorrow. We'll give Lauren a few hours to get it organised, but all of the recordings for all of our lunch and learns are available on YouTube. So if you missed my end of year for the accounting modules last week, you can also view that one again. Pam, if you've got any closing comments, we might wrap it up.
Yeah, look, don't panic. Take your time. You know, if you have any problems, that's what we're here to help you with. You know, if you get stuck or, you know, if there's any uncertainty, rather than just saying, it's good enough, and then having to try and fix it later, if there's any uncertainty, please reach out to us and we're happy to help. And
as I mentioned before, we've got James online today because, like everyone, it is a busy time of year, and, you know, and while we have got Pam and Jacinda and myself who are CRE consultants and work in payroll, James is another payroll resource that we now have on staff. So even though we are busy, you know, we are here to help. Okay, well, last chance for any questions. If that's it, we might wrap this up and thank everyone for their time, and just remind you to go to YouTube to revisit the recording.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye now.